All right, so today I'm going to have a little bit of a look at Papers, Please, which is a game that was designed in order to simulate a dystopian border checkpoint is probably the best way I could describe it. You play a randomly elected bureaucrat that is assigned to check papers for people that are wanting to be processed at the checkpoint, and they are basically subject to your whims and mismanagement. And also, there is a much bleaker story going on behind it, in that your family is potentially able to get sick, but also that you have all these family struggles of people being separated at the border. I think it's quite a relevant game in these times when people are insisting on building walls or deporting people, and that simulation aspect means it becomes a bit more of a serious game than one that is fun. It's designed to make us feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable. So anyway, the as I said, it's often about some of the themes are around pressure to conform, but it starts with very nationalistic, jingoistic imagery and aesthetics, with giant eagles reminiscent of uh, either the Nazis' eagles or the old Roman banners. It's or even the Russian eagles. It's deliberately designed to be a boring game to play. A lot of checking and minutiae, and you will just slip up and not notice something because you got into a bit of a flow state. Um, as I said, the core genre. Some people say it's a fantasy or a dystopia. I would say it's a bureaucratic simulator, with a bit of family management, and it's part of a process genre or procedural genre. In terms of MDA theory, mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics, mechanically it rewards the player for adhering to a set of arbitrary guidelines that actually aren't that arbitrary, in terms of being very much based on consequences of certain actions. I've heard that there's 20 endings coded into the game, but myself, I've only experienced one, which is basically that my family dies and I get arrested because I'm just not that good at the precision cross checking that is this game requires. Um, the aesthetics, as I've mentioned, include nationalistic imagery, pixel art. It's a very simple looking game which has um, deliberately almost obscures the faces of the people that you're trying to process, making them faceless, and to the point where you can get gender violations, um, as one of the things. And often I was just like, I'm not sure that this person is supposed to identify as either gender or both. So there is that aspect of things. Um, in terms of dynamics of play, there are methods by which you can play it straight down the line. There are endings where you can play with being a rebel. You can end it by succeeding, or like using the term success in the nationalist sense. And in fact, they're in the greater scope of player behaviors. Um, there are two quite famous YouTubers who seem to take delight in playing the game insensitively. I'm not going to I'm not going to name them because I don't want to give them credit, basically. But if you just Google Papers, Please racism or Papers, Please insensitivity, you'll see images and reviews, and I'll link to some of the reviews a little bit later on. Criticisms of the gaming have, the game is widely acknowledged as one of the best games out there on Steam. It makes a point about the willingness of what we are willing to do ourselves to save loved ones. So it is quite a meaningful game, potentially, in terms of an art form. It's quite well reviewed on Steam if you have a look at it. And I think it asks some really deep questions about whether it's important to prioritise those people who you go home to at night or consider family over the needs of the people who you're dealing with. It's also received a little bit of criticism about its lack of replayability, because the story mode has a very scripted set of characters that come through sometimes. There is a man without any form of documentation or passport that just wants to come into the country. There's a subplot around an exotic dancer, sex trade ring potentially, and someone who, if you don't manage that, potentially gets killed because of your actions or inaction, your inability to defy authority if you choose not to. There's there's terrorists who are attacking and killing soldiers at the checkpoint, and shutting your processing booth down early so that you have less money for the day, so that you get your son and your wife and I think it's your uncle can get sick. You can apparently escape to a different country if you survive long enough to do that. I was not ever precise enough to manage those kinds of aspects. But yeah, I think that one of the core things is this idea around pressure to perform, and this bleakness and dystopian track that we have around immigration, making us insensitive to the wider world. In terms of creative context, Lucas Pope has spoken about both his career and why he wanted to make the game. Apparently it was quite a cheap game to make. He basically left his AAA game studio in order to develop it because Naughty Dog. He was working on Naughty Dog in the Uncharted series and found that it wasn't exploring any work that was innovative, and he thought that making a commentary on the nature of endless and needless work and the exhaustion and those aspects actually made for some interesting commentary on both game design as an industry and the world we live in, and won a large number of awards for it. So obviously it was well received. Yeah,